You want answers? I think I'm entitled. You want answers? I want the truth. You can't handle the truth. I've got men on wars. Who's going to stand on those wars? You? You, Lieutenant Weinberg? I don't think so. So don't think I give a damn what you think you're entitled to. Did you order the code red? You don't have to answer the question, or I answer the question. Did you order the code red? You goddamn right I did! You're watching me, Mick, on my YouTube channel, Movies TV Mad. You can also follow me on X at Movies TV Mad and on Instagram, Movies TV Mad X. No, I'm not going mad. Today we're going to talk about whatever happened with entertainment. I think in terms of the entertainment industry today and then, I think if you're around my age, if you're around our age, or even slightly younger than me, you can remember like 70s movies, late 70s movies, 80s, 90s, early 90s, not just movies, television. I grew up with Dallas, Dynasty, Knots Landing, the A-Team, Street Hawk, Knight Rider, and the list goes on, you know, because television was made quite cheaply when I was growing up. And there wasn't much depth to a lot of television we watched, but it was the artistry, it was the writing. It kept you hooked, right? It didn't have to be overly deep. It didn't have to be Game of Thrones, but it worked for that generation. And the movies, Superman the movie, Star Wars A New Hope, Empire Strikes Back, then, you know, you move on a few years, Batman 89, Batman Returns, The Running Man, Total Recall, The Untouchables, JFK, Born on the 4th of July, Casualties of War, the list goes on, and they're just some of my favourites. So many great movies were being made and viewed as I was growing up. And entertainment to me as I was growing up was a huge inspiration away from the darkness of going to school, being bullied, suffering from dyslexia, as I do today, having special remedial lessons because I couldn't add up properly or couldn't write properly. And my brother used to tease me about it. My parents were ashamed of me. Why can't you be like your brother? It was very difficult for me growing up. Now, it wasn't the worst childhood in the world. We were looked after. My dad was doing very, very well. So I can't really kind of complain too much. But it was difficult and I needed an escape, and my screen, my television, the cinema screen was something very important to me. I think Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs, you know, was one of the first movies I went to see in the movie theatre, but Superman the movie was the first movie I'd ever saw, and I saw that with my brother and my dad, and that was such an uplifting experience. It was a beautiful experience being introduced to this superhero, this pure-hearted superhero, and it was so well made for its time as well. And, you know, it was amazing. And so that was my introduction into make-believe, and it was such a great medicine for me that I could escape my dreary real world. I lived in Thatcher's Great Britain. England always seemed dark and gloomy to me. It was cold. We used to come home. My mum used to look after us. Of course she did. She was a great mother. But the thing we really had was our televisions. And for me, I was one of those kids. I was a bit like Bill Murray in Scrooged. As a kid, you see him just totally watching TV. That's what I was like. And when we got our first video recorder, I used to record everything, stop the adverts. I remember watching V, the sci-fi series, for the first time. I was so immersed in it. So growing up, I was inspired by the entertainment I was watching. You know, I remember looking forward to Oscar night and imagining my acceptance speech, something I wouldn't do anymore because I'm not inspired by Hollywood anymore. And here's the problem today. Kids are uninspired by entertainment so much that kids don't watch television anymore. You know, kids don't watch movies anymore. It's the truth. They're on TikTok. They're on their devices. Yes, they watch Netflix, right? But, you know, they do a lot of different things, you know. So That's the problem as well, streaming sprawl. You know, they only watch what they're interested in watching, and they'll drop that. It'll be gaming, it'll be TikTok. That's where they're at. So it's very, very difficult to attract a new generation to film and television. Of course, it would be easier to do if the movies and the television shows they were making were actually any good. The thing is, with streaming today, you need rewatchability. And most of the things they make for streaming are not rewatchable. If I think of Zack Snyder's Army of the Dead, which is a really good film, but I've never been motivated to go back and rewatch that film. Now, obviously, Man of Steel, BVS, and the Snyder Cut, I've rewatched again and again. They have rewatchability. But when we look at streaming originals, you know, I would think if you want to keep your subscribers, you need rewatchability. And most of the stuff they make isn't rewatchable. I mean, unless you're talking about something like BoJack Horseman, which I adore. I go back and rewatch that a lot. So it's a mixed bag right now. In terms of cinematically, there's not much to get excited about. But what happened? What went wrong? What happened from television and movies that were magical? That could, you know, because entertainment used to be a portal to help us escape. And for some reason, television and movies today have become something that keep us in the real world. So imagine being a child or a teenager today. You have no escapism whatsoever. Not being able to escape reality, to escape your own reality, is very, very bad for you, everyone. Very bad for you. And this is why so many teenagers, so many people in their 20s today are suffering from anxiety and mental health problems, because there's never a day off. You go onto social media, there's a new argument in the world of football or sports or music or films. We're not even focusing on our entertainment anymore. We talk about entertainment more than actually consume entertainment. I mean, look at me right now. Every day I'm doing a half-an-hour video here, a couple of videos on X, a video on Instagram, talking about the thing I'm passionate about. But unlike a lot of people today, I still listen to music and I still watch a hell of a lot of movies. I love movies. I love television. But something has gone very, very wrong. And I think, as I say, if you're our age, I think the memories of the great stuff, the escapism. And the thing is, with, as I said earlier, with television, it was very, very simple. As I say, it wasn't Game of Thrones. It wasn't deep. It wasn't Prison Break. It was A-Team. It was the Knight Rider. Knight Rider, not the Knight Rider, but Knight Rider, Street Hawk. These things were just simple. There wasn't much to them. You know, every episode of Knight Rider was simply the same. But you had this brilliant car, you know, who befriended its driver, Michael Knight, and they used to go on different adventures every week. It was enough because we didn't know any better. In the UK, we only had 3 TV channels when I was a little kid. There was no cable, there was no multi-channels, and there was no streaming. So it's kind of interesting what's happened today. Maybe having too much is kind of over-egged the pudding. And I think that may be a huge problem with why the quality of entertainment has gone down. But what's interesting to me when you look at creatives like Russell T Davies, the Supremo at Doctor Who, back again, when you've got someone like that who brought entertainment back so well, but now has come back and is gaslighting the fans that originally loved him. You know, it's like we've woken up in some alternate universe. If someone like Russell T Davies is trying to destroy the things that he built, where are we? What's going on in this industry? Why? Why is that mentality like that? Why is Russell T Davies at war with his own consumer? And we have to ask the question. Of course, it's very political and people are angry on both sides. And I think that's part of the problem as well. The industry are no longer the adults in the room. And they used to be the adults in the room. Of course, growing up, I was born in 72. There was no way of communicating with Robert De Niro, Marlon Brando, or great directors. They were up there. We were down here. They fed us with stuff. and we either liked it or not. But the difference is when I was growing up, but even in the 90s and the early noughties, I never used to talk about vigorously the stuff I didn't like. If I didn't like something, I shrugged my shoulders and I moved on. But the attitude's changed today. You look at the attitude towards the Snyderverse of DC movies when they came out, and the vile that they were being spoken about, like Zack Snyder had gone round to these people's houses and assassinated their children and wives. And it's amazing how deeply people take these things. And it wasn't the mentality because we didn't have the apparatus to vent so much. And we vent about everything today. And that's the problem. The most popular content creators are the ones who vent with anger. And anger today makes money. That's not me. I can be angry sometimes, but it doesn't last long enough. And your nerdrotics and your geeks and gamers make a lot of money off of people's anger. Even like football channels of my own Manchester United. Anger sells. So you never hear them talking about solutions because they don't care about real solutions. They care about making money. Meanwhile, they're stirring the pot. They're stirring you up. And that's the problem today. I think because the way society has gone, I think that entertainment has gone there with it. But entertainment has lost its magic. It's lost its escapism. It's not about wonder and magic anymore. I remember I used to sit there on a Sunday afternoon, put a VHS of the Gremlins on, or Gremlins 2, or Back to the Future, another film series I didn't mention where we were talking about all the great movies we grew up with. You put Back to the Future in, it's magical, it's escape, it's innocent, it's simple. I think the problem is, as a human race, we lost our innocence. Of course, there's always been horrible things happening behind the scenes in the entertainment industry. I know that. I understand that. But that isn't on us. It doesn't matter how Back to the Future was made. It doesn't matter if they brought in slave traders from Rwanda or whatever. I don't think I said the country properly, right? But although that would be wrong, what I'm saying is that's not on us. We didn't make that happen. That's the point. And the actual movies were innocent. And that's why they've lasted forever. Let me ask you a question. How many movies today will be remembered for the next 50 or 60 years? The Star Wars original trilogy will always be remembered. Superman the movie will always be remembered. Back to the Future trilogy we just spoke about will always be remembered because they were made by talented people, titans of industry. And we lack those people in the entertainment industry today, mainly because they've been driven away. I hear people saying that Friends was a problematic series because it used to make fat jokes or say this or say that. And it's a bit like the brilliant Christmas movie, Love Actually. It makes like fat jokes, it says a few uncomfortable things. But I don't think we should cancel it just because it says things that are a bit cruel and kind, because humour has always done that. It's up to you to decide what you consume. But Love Actually is a beautiful, sweet little film with its heart in the right place. And, also a product of its time. But the problem today, we're looking at everything. We're looking back at everything. Look at that. Look what they did there. This was really, really problematic. Only on today's terms. And I think at the end of the day, I think if we weren't so up our own backsides and thinking this is problematic and that's problematic, because when you go and watch a film or a television show, you should switch off and just enjoy it and not worry about what they're saying on Twitter or what they're saying on Instagram. It doesn't really matter. If you like it, you like it. There's a lot of stuff that people on Twitter tell me not to watch anymore, television and movies, because it's problematic. On the quiet, I still watch it. I still watch Carry On, even though people say it's perverted and I shouldn't watch Carry On. I think it's utterly funny. James Bond apparently sexualizes women. We know it sexualized women in the old days, but I still watch those films and enjoy them. I keep quiet about it because these were films that I grew up with. And again, they did have an innocence about them because back then, and I have to be careful the way I say this so I don't upset anyone, but men, and I'm not going to say men were men, I'm going to say men were represented in a certain way and women were represented in a certain way. Women liked looking sexy and liked going shopping. Some women were housewives. Some women in films and TV were still independent, working women like Karen McKenzie in Knots Landing and Abby Ewing in Knots Landing, and obviously the wonderful Joan Collins played Alexis, a vibrant, ambitious, successful woman. So there were like really strong women in television and film. There just wasn't so much of them. The difference is then, like when you look at someone like Abby Ewing, if you remember it, if you're around my age, or if you remember, like Alexis from Dynasty, they had brilliant personalities. They were very entertaining to watch, but they were strong females. You don't see that with female characters today. Even when they try and make them strong, they just make them annoying. I was watching Tenet from Christopher Nolan, and that female in that movie, and I forgot her name, is just not likable in any sense. And it's interesting because she's supposed to be a victim in the movie. She's trying to empower herself and take control back from a very, very bad person she's with, and it's interesting to me that I just don't like her because the way they portray women today is so one-dimensional, and it normally is this kind of gruffness, this unlikableness, this unrelatable element of it. You think of Margot Kidder as Lois Lane in Superman the movie, so relatable, so likable, so lovable because there's a personality there. She talks a lot, she talks really fast, but you love her. You like her. You love Princess Leia in A New Hope. I do believe they did Princess Leia dirty in Empire and Return of the Jedi. She was much more stronger and independent in A New Hope than she just was the woman who fancied Han Solo, as far as I'm concerned. And the stuff they made her wear in Return of the Jedi was a joke. But at least she was strong and independent in A New Hope at the very least. But I still feel the good, strong female characters from when I was growing up were actually strong and better and well-rounded and written than they are today. Because they're not really representing your mum, your sister, your girlfriend, or your female best friend. They're representing Californian women. And at the end of the day, what woman out there wants to see rich, spoiled women who've been living off their mother and father's reputation, right? Entitled people. If you want, they talk about representing women like they're representing Jane, who's, bringing up 5 kids on her own, down some estate in North London or something. They're not representing those people. They're not representing real people. They put one woman on the screen and they go, oh my God, how does it feel that you're representing millions of women around the world? You are not. You are not representing millions of working class women around the world. You're representing Californian women. And at the end of the day, someone who used to live in California, that's not really something you need to do because Californian women don't represent the rest of the women around the world. They live in a bubble. They live in an echo chamber. Most of them are very, very wealthy. Most of them use men for money. They are not the kind of people to aspire to be. And so there's no real representation and inclusion in Hollywood. But at least like when I was growing up, when we had Eddie Murphy and a few black artists, male and female out there like Whoopi Goldberg, they were the real thing. They were there because they deserved to be there. They weren't there simply just to represent and, be inclusive to the rest of the black community around the world. Eddie deserved to be where he was. He was there for a reason. The guy who made all those sound effects with his mouth in Police Academy was there because he was talented. Lenny Henry was successful on the BBC when I was growing up because he deserved to be there. And today, that's not always the case. They've got it wrong. And this is why entertainment is, how can I say, in the toilet today. Because the first motivation isn't entertainment. it's their ideology, and it's their politics. And it always comes out, because also these days, the people from the industry talk far too much, too openly on social media. And you're saying, well, Mick, they have as much right to give their opinions as you do. But even I stop at some point. When I'm on social media, I barely talk about my private life, if anything at all about my private life. I talk about my passion for entertainment. I don't talk about my politics because I'm not really a political person. But the thing is, with these people in Hollywood and public figures, they are obsessed with politics, and they go on and they go on and they go on, and they never fucking stop. They don't talk about the weather. They never talk about their own industry, hardly. It's about politics all the time. We see Mark Hamill do it all the time. And in the end, I think to myself, I respect the people who are on Instagram and only pop up now and again and don't bore on about what they think about the world. Because once you rub another person's ideology in their face, there's only one eventuality. There's going to be consequences because you're winding each other up. It isn't smart. If you want to speak about your political opinion, speak about your political opinion. But don't tell the other political person, the other ideology, the opposing opinion that you're right and they're wrong. Growing up, my dad used to say to me, you know, we've got guests today, no politics and religion at the table because people get upset. And, you know, the whole point is, why upset people if you don't have to? But when you're famous people, when you're successful people, and you can do and say whatever you want, they don't understand. But it's one thing to be like that with each other in their big houses and their mansions and when they're working in Hollywood. But when you're on the internet, you're talking to working class, ordinary people from ordinary backgrounds, humble backgrounds, and they're not going to take your shit. And when you say something dumb, when you say something that insults their ideology, right? When you're not humble, they're going to bring you up on it. And that's the problem. So what happens is a lot of these famous people are not used to people who tell them the truth. So when they go on social media, you know, and they get their opinions handed to them, they don't like it. What do they do straight away? They mute you or block you. Then they start bragging about muting and blocking you. Like it's clever that you can't have an ordinary piece of discourse with an ordinary human being. That says more about you than it does about them. I've been blocked, as I keep on telling you, by many, many famous people. There was a famous incident with an actor who I had to mute in the end because he just wouldn't leave me alone. We were talking about representation and inclusion, and he wouldn't stop. As I say, they are obsessed with their own ideology, and it's become, you know, as a member of the public, as someone, as I said earlier, who loves entertainment, it's become too much. And as I say, the motivation isn't to entertain us anymore. For example, I say this story all the time, but the film with Michael Douglas, which was made several years ago, Falling Down, is actually commentary, social commentary on, you know, toxic masculinity. And when I tell people that, they go, no, Mick, no way. But it's true. And we don't, you know, I didn't know that for years until I was watching a TikTok video. Really? I thought it's just a guy gone mad because the world's so fucked up. I mean, it is partially that as well. But, you know, this guy treats his wife terribly. And, you know, in the end, you see that he is actually the problem. But the thing is, back then, they didn't want you to know that maybe they didn't like men, that straight men were a problem. But these days, they want men, especially straight men, to know that they hate us. And that is part of the problem. Because if your audience, if your consumer knows you hate them, then they ain't going to shop at your counter. They're not going to want good things for you. They're not going to want your films and television shows to do well. And this is what this discourse, this toxicity has created. Because not only are the movies and the television not good enough, and they've got better technology to make things even better today, but the problem is you can have all the technology you want. If you can't write something entertaining with depth, that kind of compels the audience and the audience relate to the characters. There's no point. But there's something else when I was growing up. We related to the actors. Not only did we look up to them, I related to Christopher Reeve. I related to Mark Hamill. I related to Harrison Ford. You know, you related to these actors because even though they were wealthy, they didn't overdo it. You didn't feel you couldn't achieve what they achieved. As a kid, as I say, I used to watch Oscar night and look at them going into the Oscars and thinking that could be me if I become a good enough actor, which obviously didn't happen. But, you know, you can aspire to these things. And I look at it today and Hollywood is just a closed house. And it's getting worse and worse and worse. And I don't think that kids can aspire to be actors today. And also, I'm just wondering, would you want to aspire to be an actor today? You know, I was seeing a couple of actors at a photo shoot the other day, and they looked so miserable. And I think it's the girl who plays Wednesday, I forgot her name, and Tommy Lee Jones, and they were just standing there, and honestly, they looked miserable as sin. I mean, like back in the day, at least people used to pretend they were having fun and made it look glamorous and interesting. But it's not even that now. It looks like even the people who work in this industry now are not having a good time. And if you're not having a good time, how can I have a good time? At least present it as a fun, glamorous place to be. Because it doesn't seem like that anymore. So they're miserable. We're miserable consuming their mid-shit. So where do we go from here? Well, we know. We know where we're going to go from here. Warner Brothers and Disney are on the verge of bankruptcy. I saw a report saying there's a 60% chance that Warner Brothers Discovery could go bankrupt. That's how badly run it was by AT&T. And Zaslav was brought in to save them, and he hasn't managed to do that. So they're in trouble. Disney are in trouble because, as I said the other day, they've gone to the mat with their consumer, and you cannot do that. You can spray out a bunch of stupid opinions. You can be overly political, but when you make stuff that doesn't entertain the audience, that doesn't compel the audience to keep on watching, to keep on paying for your streaming services, to go to the cinema, buying popcorn and watching your movies. And I think, in a way, the last of that really was with Endgame. Endgame was such a huge, Avengers Endgame was such a huge thing. People went to the cinema, they cheered and clapped. But we don't see that anymore. There's no excitement anymore. There's no enjoyment. There's still good films being made, Oppenheimer, and Barbie if it's your kind of thing. But there are still good films being made, but not as many. And when you look at television, there's still some good television being made, but not as many. In the early thousands, we had Smallville, we had Lost, we had Alias, we had 24, one of the most outstanding television shows ever made. It was the era of great television, and for the first time, TV was even better than watching a movie. That's how big that the genre was back in the early noughties. But that ended as well. And then films weren't so good anymore. So it's all become utterly disappointing. But it's not just about being disappointed in what we're getting. It's the feedback we're getting from the industry, the directors, the producers, the writers, and the actors. That it's our fault for not just watching and making them money. That we're the problem. And that is very, very typical of Tinseltown today. They don't want to take responsibility for failing as a community. We have young Rachel Zegler going around calling Prince Charming a stalker, which is the dumbest thing you can do. You're in a Snow White movie. Snow White wouldn't even be famous without the 1939 animated movie. And you're dissing it. Say it's a bit different. Say your movie is a modernization. And that's okay. And that's fine. But when you start going after beloved things that have been in the heart and soul for so long, this is where the problem begins. It's like the people who have made a Colour Purple reboot, which should never have happened. They're starting to say that their movie is so much better than the original, and they've gone further than the original. This is disrespect of the highest level, and it's part of the disrespect and disrespect that we're seeing from New Hollywood today. Because let me just finish off by saying this. New Hollywood is nowhere near at the standard of what Hollywood used to be. So you can keep on saying that your stuff is better than the past, but it's simply not true.